We are back with our CBR, and today it's time to do the braking system and the drive system. But enough for the chit chat, let's get on it. When I say taking care of the braking system, I mean getting the calipers that I just rebuilt with brand new pads on the bike, the hoses, putting fresh fluid into it and bleed it. I have brand new hoses from Galfer, made specific for this bike, and they're still braided, so a much needed improvement over the rubber hose that come with the bike itself. And when it comes to the rear for the drive, I have new sprocket, front and rear, and new chain from Vortex. We're gonna install that as well. And that means that the bike could actually be somewhat drivable. But let's not jump the shark just yet, and let's put those freshly rebuilt calipers on the bike. When you're putting the calipers back on, there are a few things that are crucial and need to be taken very seriously. First of all, a simple thing. If you don't know which way the caliper goes because you took it apart 2 months ago, there is a sign or an engraving, let's see, that says up. So you know that this portion is up, you know that this Nissin branding goes on the outside, therefore the caliper goes that way. Another thing to know is the bolts. They need to be the proper bolts. I can't stress this enough. You cannot just go to the Home Depot, get a bolt that is the same length and the same thread and slap it in. Those have a certain amount of strength, so they need to be OEM Honda bolts or comparable. But when I say comparable, I'm talking about the strength of the bolt itself. I'm not talking about, well, it fits, I'm gonna put it in. If you put the wrong strength. Another thing to know about the bolts is you need thread lock. I became big fan of the orange thread lock. This one is high strength, but it's still removable, because to replace the brake pads, you gotta remove the caliper. That is about it. Other than that, torque everything properly, because if you don't torque everything properly, when it comes to the rear caliper, it's more of the same with a twist, meaning it's a little harder to install it because the brake pads are moving freely. Not quite freely, but they're moving a lot compared to the front, so you gotta pay attention to that when you install it. The second thing is, one of the two is not a bolt. This one is a bolt, goes in, same thing, you just torque it properly, add the thread lock to it. But this one is a pin, and this thing is supposed to slide back and forth, so you gotta add proper brake grease on that thing. And that's about it. There is literally no way to install this caliper backwards because only one of the holes over there is threaded. Make sure that the brake pads sit in there, just like that. Time to get the new lines back in. If you're like me and you chose the Galfer one, instead of being like the OEM, a single line that forks at a certain point, the Galfer are two individual lines. So pay attention, because they say master cylinder left and master cylinder right. This end goes to the master cylinder up top, while this end, which is bent in a weird way, goes on the bottom on the caliper. Pay attention to the way the hose bends, so the bend needs to flare out away from the wheel. And why left and right? Because they both have different bends and also different length. Remember, if you're using the Golfer kit, now your max torque for steel banjo bolts, the one I have, is between 15 and 17 foot-pounds, which is about 22 newton meters. Don't use the OEM torque specs. And as always, every time you're using copper washer, look at the washer. If the washer is starting to deform and stretch too much, stop. It's time to do the same to the rear caliper. I'm gonna run the new hose all the way to the master cylinder over there, which is just the same as what I've done up front, so I'll spare you guys that. Also, I'm gonna put fresh fluid and bleed the brakes, which is a long and painfully tedious job. I'm gonna spare you that too. So we're gonna move directly into the chain and sprockets. Look at this beauty. Brand new front sprocket, brand new rear sprocket, brand new chain. Obviously, remember, when you buy the sprockets and the chain, first of all, if you can afford it, change all of them at the same time. Second, make sure that they all match. I went OEM when it comes to the size, so the rear is a 43, the front is a 16, but when it came to the chain, I wanted something slightly better than OEM, so I went with the Vortex, and this one is a 530. Remember, when you choose 530, 520, whatever your preference is, make sure that all three of them match. 530, 520 is the width of the chain itself, and you want the sprocket or the sprockets and the chain to be the same. Changing the sprockets is a very simple job. Literally 6 bolts in the back, 1 up front, and then you remove it. You're gonna have to cut the chain. I pre-cut the chain and removed it. When it came to this, I loosened it up so I can actually do it by hand and not waste your time. And that is literally single bolt. You remove it and then you just wiggle the sprocket out, and that's it. If this wasn't messy with a rust and so on, I would just pull this one out, put the new one in, bolt it back on, torque it to specs, and call it a day. But unfortunately, it's dirty, so give me 5 minutes, I'm gonna clean that up, and then we're gonna start installing the new stuff. Super simple. Slap it back on, and then bolt. When it comes to the rear, you obviously need to remove the rear wheel to install the sprocket. Easy enough. It's easier with 2 people. All right, it is time to put the master link on it, but before we do, we gotta lube it up with some of this lube provided by vortex. And then we're gonna add those O-rings that came with it. Some more O-rings. And then the plate. I need to press the plate in, and I'm gonna use the Motion Pro tool. What you gotta do, you gotta match the sign that says press over here with the P on this side, like that. Press and P, and then put this on. All right. Once it's pressed in, remove it. There you go. Now it's pressed in. The only thing to do now is to flare out those rivets over here. And same thing, you match the R over here with the rivet. Then you change the tip to this tip over here. And one at a time, you do that. The chain is on, brand new sprockets. It's now time to adjust the tension of the chain as per Honda specs. I have already 2-3 videos on how to adjust the chain on my channel. So let's keep moving, let's get it done. The only thing you need to pay attention to is as you're adjusting this using those bolts, you need to make sure that both sides, left and right, are aligned to the same tick mark. If they're not, your tire is not going to be straight and your bike is going to act and handle weird. So pay attention to that. And that's it for today. Brake system is done. Drive system is done as well. I'm gonna do a proper chain adjustment once the bike is on the ground. Other than that, the bike's starting to look really, really good. We have those gold wheels that match somehow perfectly with the calipers. And then those braided hoses that go up for the brakes. It's coming along. It's almost there. I can almost feel it. A few more things and this will be a proper rolling motorcycle. Yeah, no fairings, but we'll get there. For everything I used in this video, check the description down below for links. For my patrons, on the Patreon page, there's gonna be pages of the manual with the torque specs and the tolerances for everything I've done today. For everybody else, thank you very much for watching this video. Dai tutti, and I'll see you next time.